Sail Pensacola is about the business and fun of sailing on the Pensacola Bay. Our aesthetic encompasses foiling in all forms. My name is Tim Reichon, and today I'll be talking to Adrian Lahai of Shred Services about Waydoo and HydroFlyer, two e-foiling platforms aimed at easing the on-ramp to foiled flight. And from there, add a wing, then a sail, and soon we have a sailor. We are 21 days away from the third preliminary regatta of the 37th America's Cup International Sailing Competition, which will be sailed in Barcelona on foiling 75-foot monohulls. This past weekend, the powered racing world saw the E1 electric hydrofoiling racing skiffs flashing around the waters of Monaco, backed by some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment. And this very week, the world is watching Olympic sailors flying across the waters of Marseille on hydrofoiling boards in the IQ class and hydrofoiling NACRA 17 along with Formula kites. It is not an exaggeration to say that hydrofoiling is surging, and in sailing, it explains how the fastest boats achieve 60 knots on wind alone. Sailors of all ages want a taste of this speed, but are often discouraged by the technical complexity and price of the most visible foiling options. Against that backdrop, Waydoo and HydroFlyer were developed, foiling electric boards aimed to on-ramp the pre-foiling masses. To dig into these boats, I reached out to Adrian Lahai of Shred Services. He agreed to visit Pensacola on August 17th and 18th to present these boards in person and on the water. Today, I talked with Adrian about what has gone into the design and philosophy of these boards and how they see the market of future foilers. Welcome, Adrian Lahai. It's great to meet you and great to get to learn about these gizmos. But first, I want to find out and talk about your sailing, boarding, and foiling interest and experience and how you got to Shred Services.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name's Adrian Lahai. I'm 23 years old. Was originally born in the Netherlands, but moved to the US and lived here for about 11 years. And then about 10 years ago, I went back to the Netherlands and finished off my university there. So I guess my sailing background starts from my father, who was a world champion windsurfer. I got into sailing optimists and lasers at a pretty young age at the Monmouth Boat Club in Red Bank, New Jersey. Did that for a few years and then moved to the Netherlands. I picked up Hobie sailing pretty quickly there because all of my dad's friends from South Africa started Hobie sailing and still do that. So yeah, started on the Hobie Dragoon, then moved to I guess at the same time I was doing some NACRA F-18 stuff, did the round Texel race on that. Then Hobie 14, I did that for a few years, did a world championships there in Noordwijk in 2017 or 18. Then I was doing the Hobie 16 as well. I did the European Championships on that, as well as Dutch Nationals and I believe Belgian Nationals. And yeah, after quite a bit of Hobie sailing, moving into university, kind of owning a boat and dealing with all that stuff on the beach became a little bit difficult. So I picked up kiteboarding. And since then, I haven't really been doing anything other than that. It really has taken my passion and moved me into that. So few years ago, I guess 2021, I became an IKO certified kiteboarding instructor, which is what brought me to Charleston, South Carolina, and Session Sports, which is where I became an instructor. And alongside Session Sports, Shred Services works out of the same warehouse, along with the same group of people. So I slowly moved into kind of doing more stuff for Shred Services, kind of answering the phone calls, a little bit of customer service and warranty stuff, and now some in-house sales. So kind of a mix between a kiteboarding instructor and in-house sales at Shred Services at the moment.
Fantastic. Wow. So today we're going to talk about a couple of boards that are a bit different than you're flying around on the tail end of a kite from. But let me ask, so your board that you're kiting with is a foil board, I'm guessing, right?
No. So generally I ride a twin tip construction when I'm doing kiteboarding. Back in the day, I was really interested in getting into foiling, so I actually built my own foil board myself, laid up the carbon fiber, got some foam from Home Depot and all of that, and made it into a board which could foil. Um, because, as you know, it was a little bit expensive at the time to kind of get a full foil setup, especially being in college, wasn't really something I was able to do. Um, but yeah, so I got into that a little bit. I still ride that board when I do kite foil. I've been getting into that a little bit more now that I've got the experience from the e-foils and learned how to do that properly. So now I can bring that skill into kiteboarding, and now I'm kite foiling as well.
Fantastic. Very interesting. And what a great path to come into the e-foiling world from sailing. So now we see all of these classes of new boats, new inventions coming in with foils underneath them, from flow ones to skeetas to birdie fishes, all the way up to what we're seeing in Sail GP with F50s and, of course, the AC40s and the AC75s. And then everything on the ocean, it seems, has foils as well in sort of one form or another. So it's foiling everywhere.
Absolutely.
The current topic of our discussion is these two boards that you're going to bring to Pensacola. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Waydoo. So there is definitely an expanding market for these e-foiling boards. What is the origin story of this board? How did it get started?
Yeah, so Waydoo was started in 2018 in Shenzhen, China. So I guess Dennis, who is the owner of Waydoo, is very close with the people at DJI Drones. So all the consumer drones and kind of high-end photography drones, even agricultural drones nowadays, are made by DJI. And they saw kind of an opportunity with this e-foiling picking up. There were a few other brands on the market at the time. However, they're pretty cost prohibitive. I mean, they were around the $13,000 range just to get started. And they felt that they could do it at a more affordable price point with the same components, the same performance based on the knowledge and learnings from DJI in their drone space. So kind of their goal in doing this was to have the same performance as any of the other e-foils on the market while being more simple in its design, allowing for a lower price point to get people out on the water.
Where are
And
they
yeah, so
built?
they started with their Kickstarter campaign in 2018, 2019, which is where we started doing third-party logistics for them, shipping out their boards. And that was so successful that we decided to become a distribution for them and purchase stock and sell to dealers and customers across the U.S. here, which we've been doing since 2019. We've had, I guess this is now the third model since then, so it's been going very well for us.
Where are they built?
They're built in Shenzhen, China. So in China, Shenzhen is kind of like the Silicon Valley of China. My boss Kevin was over there a couple months ago to see the factory and see what they've got going on over there, and he was thoroughly impressed by what he saw.
The target market for this board, what would you say you're focusing your attention on when you advertise or demo or take this market to the streets? What group are you after?
Yeah, so I think in the past, e-foils have kind of been designed for people who have board sports experience, people like myself who, have kiteboarded and want to get into kite foiling or anything like that, and kind of want the utmost performance of foiling in a sense without needing, a boat to tow you around or waves or wind or anything like that. Versus now, I think we're seeing more of a general public getting into e-foiling and saying that I guess it's not something that you have to have board sports experience for. It is something that anyone can do. It looks intimidating maybe at the first shot, but of all the foiling types I've tried, e-foiling is by far the easiest. And yeah, I'd say it's basically for anyone. Yeah, so the US market has definitely liked the Waydoo. Certainly, we've seen initially, as I said, in more board sports athletes who have taken it on. But now I think that people are moving away from jet skis a little bit, at least from the conversations I've had, and moving into different forms of personal watercraft, such as the e-foil. So definitely have seen a big uptake in the US here. We see it that once someone on a lake gets an e-foil and people see that this is something that they're familiar with and actually you can go out and do it on your own lake, all of a sudden tons of people on the lake want the exact same thing and they want to go out together. So certainly have seen a lot of success with it here.
Are we behind Europe in terms of e-foiling and board foiling activity?
That's a good question. I'd say we might be a little bit ahead even of Europe in terms of the e-foiling market. I'd say, there is the European distributor for Waydoo, and speaking with him, they still do very well over there. As you mentioned, they're pretty far along in the foiling journey, if you will. But I'd say over here, we focus a little bit more on leisure crafts and recreational activities and things like that, to where, the lake life is really big around the US and going out in the water, things like that. So I'd say, especially since the US is one of the biggest water sports markets in the world, definitely is a place that does well for the e-foils.
What do you consider the market potential in the US in terms of how much you can expand and how many boards you can sell on this platform?
Yeah, so I mean, every year we've seen the e-foiling market grow substantially. So I don't see any limit to that really. I think over time the boards are going to get better. They're going to be more suitable for more riders. I think people are going to understand that this is something that's feasible for them to do, especially at a lower price point. And yeah, just add to your summer fun.
What's your strategy for getting these to consumers? Do you open dealerships or how do you handle that?
Yeah, so I think we have around 70 different dealers across the US based on all the different brands that we sell. So definitely getting them into dealers' hands and getting them into schools' hands is a really big deal as well. So there's a lot of people around the US who do e-foiling lessons to get people out on the water, to give them a try. And then if they like what they've tried, then they have the opportunity to purchase one of the boards as well. So that's a great way for people to get in on the water, especially with a developing I guess, industry like foiling. People need to be able to give it a try before they put down the money and purchase one themselves. They need to know that this is something that I can do. This is something that I'll enjoy. Um, that really makes a big difference to be able to have people to try the boards.
Are there other features or considerations that make this board stand out to a consumer compared to what else is on the market besides price point?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about the Waydoo is the simplicity of it. So there's two things that are kind of wrapped into that. Number one, it's the foam board. So it's a high density EPP foam, which is far more durable than a fiberglass or a carbon fiber is going to be. When I teach lessons, I can throw the board fully assembled into the back of my truck. I don't have to tie it down or anything like that. I'm not putting it into a board bag or anything. And I don't have to worry about the scratches or dings. When students are coming back to the dock and they may be going a little bit too quickly and they bump into the dock, there's no real concern about, dinging your fiberglass or your carbon or getting a crack in your board. Obviously, it's not bulletproof, the foam, but certainly far more durable. We do sell the carbon boards as well. And I quite often will suggest to people, especially beginners, that it's better to go for the foam one. You're not going to have any rigidity issues or durability issues with it. Makes it a lot more simple for your average person to use. Additionally, the Waydoo at the moment comes in basically three parts. So you've got the power unit, you've got the board, and you've got the battery. And the board and the power unit, or the battery and the power unit, will kind of sandwich in between the board to kind of connect it all into one, instead of having battery cables or cooling going into the battery, things like that. Those things will all just kind of complicate the process, especially with salt water and electronic components in water. You want to be very careful with things like that. So with the Waydoo, it's really simple, really easy to set up, makes it a lot easier for beginners and kind of anyone trying to get out in the water.
Was there something I read about a flight control component that is different and unique for this model?
Yeah, so the brand new Evo has come out in the last couple months, maybe two or three. And one thing that Waydoo does a really good job of is innovating. So they've included some sensors in the front of the board, which are going to measure your distance between the water and the board. So for beginners and on your lesson, if you start to go a little bit too high out of the water, what may happen is the propeller and the foils will come out of the water as well, which will cause you to breach and fall into the water. With the height sensors, the goal is to be able to kind of reduce your throttle and reduce your lift to be able to drop you back down into the water safely before you ever go and breach out of it. Same thing when you come too low. So if it looks like you're going to touch down into the water, it's going to increase the throttle a little bit and kind of lift you back up out of the water and keep you nice and level. I've spoken to some customers who have tried this, and I mean, the one guy, no board sports experience, no water sports experience. Within 20 minutes, he was up and foiling like a pro, sending me videos of him turning and doing a whole bunch of cool maneuvers that would normally take a few hours to get to that point. They said once they turned that sensor off, he was back to falling in the water and struggling a little bit. So it really is going to be a game changer for lessons of beginners. There's been a few companies that are kind of looking at doing it, starting out as a company based on, this one feature that they're looking at doing, and they want to maybe change the pitch of the foil, things like that. But nothing has been too successful just yet. Waydoo is certainly the one that has come first to market with it and has seen success.
Congratulations. Great to be first in the new technology.
Absolutely.
When North American boarders want to try this board, do they just go through a dealer or do they get sent to another place to try them, or how does that work?
Yeah. So first thing I do is look at the Waydoo USA website and kind of take a look at our dealer map, see if there's anyone nearby to you. Certainly looking at your local schools in the area to see if they're holding Waydoos and doing their lessons on Waydoos. That'd be a great way to go and test it out. Otherwise, the shred-services.com website, you can send a message into there. I can respond to you guys, see if I can find someone in your area to go and try out a board. Otherwise, any questions you may have, we'd be happy to answer them.
Well, the Evo is the current model. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Other models in the pipeline?
So generally, I guess up until now, it's been about a 2-year product cycle for Waydoo. So for the next 2 years at least, we'll be sticking with the Evo. I anticipate it'll probably go a little bit longer than that. A nice thing about the Evo is we've got a lot of modularity. So you can change out your mast length, your different motor sizes, your different wings, your different boards, your batteries. All of those things can be changed and used interchangeably between Evos. So I assume they'll probably add some performance like another motor or a different board or something like that before they go to a new model. But yeah, in time, eventually there will be a new model. The biggest group of people we've seen are people who are either, a kite surfer or a surfer or a mountain biker or a snowboarder or a skier, something like that, where they've got a sport that they really love, but the conditions kind of dictate that they can't do it all the time. So obviously skiing and snowboarding, you can only do that in the winter. Surfing, if the waves aren't good, that's not going to work. The wind sports with sailing and kite surfing, it's not windy, you're not able to do that. With e-foiling, you can really go out whenever you want to. So people who kind of have that itch and they want to get out and be active, those are the people who will really move into e-foils. Additionally, people who are on lakes and have the paddle boards and the pontoon boats and the kayaks and all those things to go out and enjoy the lake, this is another thing that kind of adds into their toolkit of how they can go enjoy. I think so, yeah. I mean, in riding e-foils, I've noticed very quickly that there's a lot to understanding how it works and to be really good at it and proficient. So I'd say it'll push people into sailing and into forms of foiling sailing, maybe from existing sailors first. So if you've sailed a NACRA F18 and now you try an e-foil and understand it, you may move into a foiling NACRA 17, for example. So I think people will start to understand foiling, become better at it, see the potential that it has, and then bring it into other activities that they do.
Sailing foiling industry had better be prepared for a whole bunch of new prospects to pick up the sailboat market.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in windsurfing, for example, we've seen a lot of times now they won't go onto a displacement board first. The kids who are learning now will start immediately on foiling windsurfers. So there's a lot of learning that has to happen with an e-foil first before they go into that. But it just opens the door for so many more conditions for them to be able to go out and train, especially at a young age. It just makes more sense to be foiling for these kids. So I definitely think that it'll push more people into foiling. And yeah, the sailing and wind sports industry better get ready for a bit more foiling. Yeah, absolutely. I think people who start e-foiling will definitely look into wing foiling or kite foiling or any of those other options, whether it be pump foiling or downwind foiling. There's plenty of different options where people are going to say, okay, I've done the e-foils. I enjoy it. This is fun. Now let's see if I can go pull into some waves with a wing foil and kind of utilize the wind for that as well. When it is windy and it maybe not be the best conditions for e-foiling, they want to go out and do that. And yeah, we definitely see that very often. Especially all of our wing foiling schools will start people out on an e-foil, get the basics of foiling down, and then move them on to the wing. Um, we see it in plenty of places around the world that this is kind of the new format of teaching for all of these sports. Yeah, so Jerry MacArthur was the founder and CEO of HydroFlyer. He lives up in Squamish, British Columbia. And as I mentioned, big time snowboarder, snowmobiler, mountain biker, wing foiler as well. And he wanted to find a way to combine all of those passions into one with the HydroFlyer. So spent a lot of time designing it, figuring out how to make it work, and really turn it into a craft which is maximized for foiling rather than adding foils onto an already existing product. So with the handlebars, gives you a lot more stability. The in turns, you're going to be a lot better. Gives you the ability to jump it a lot easier as well. Then the nose of the board actually takes some design from the current America's Cup boats, because it's got a much more pointed and kind of V'd bow to the front of it. So as I'm sure we've seen with some of the America's Cup boats, when you put the bow into the water on a foiling craft, you have the tendency to pitch pole and go up forwards. And with all that speed, if you stop suddenly, you're going to go back forwards and crash into the water. So with that displacement bow, makes it a lot easier to touch down, displace the water. You're not going to get thrown off of it. Makes it a lot easier for beginners, and also unlocks a lot more potential for more experienced riders.
I think I've seen at least maybe one other brand that has a handlebar type apparatus on their board. How would you say the HydroFlyer is different from the competition?
I'd say it's completely different. So any of the competitors who have put handlebars onto an e-foil, it's kind of an afterthought. They add the handlebars as kind of a stability tool, maybe for schools or for lessons. But from what I've seen, they're nowhere near as stable with the handlebars as the HydroFlyer. So it's not as confidence inspiring for the other ones. And also, the hull design is not optimized for, I guess, having weight and pressure near the front where the handlebars would be. So with a flat board, when that touches down, it's almost like a suction cup into the water. So for those beginners and people who want to learn, it's really not an optimized tool for doing so. The HydroFlyer is really quite a few steps above any of those in terms of that, as it was designed from the get-go for exactly that purpose. Another thing is the curved mast on the HydroFlyer. It allows you to kind of stand a little bit further forward, have a lot more control, and really makes the handlebars make sense on a board like that. Absolutely, yeah. So you will see a little bit more of a lean forward position on the HydroFlyer. It allows you to have more stability in your hands with the handlebars and focus less on your legs and feet. So I will sometimes put 1 foot forward and 1 foot back to have kind of the best of both worlds. But yeah, you definitely want to have some steering authority and some level assist with your hands and your upper body. Creates a more engaging experience, and yeah, using more of your body, you can get more out of the HydroFlyer than anything else.
Is there any ride height control issues with this device like you have in the Waydoo?
No, so there isn't a height sensor or anything like that. It's all up to you. But fortunately, it's relatively simple with a HydroFlyer. You've got two methods of kind of leveling yourself out again. You can either push down on the handlebars, or you can lean forward and maybe put your feet a bit forward to kind of get that nose down again. But yeah, another nice thing about the HydroFlyer is you've got a lot of authority in the trigger. So a lot of e-foils, you've got kind of a very minute range that you can pull the trigger in and out to give you your throttle. With the HydroFlyer, you've got plenty of space to kind of adjust it on the fly while you're riding to make sure that you've got the exact power level that you may want.
This is a device that seems like it would have a lot of appeal in a resort rental program or a field of users that doesn't have a lot of experience with any other kind of boarding. Do you see a market in such places as that for this device?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe we have a resort in Italy at the moment who has taken on a bunch of HydroFlyers, and for that exact purpose, to be able to get absolute beginners out on the water and foiling in the shortest amount of time possible. That's the interesting thing about the HydroFlyer. It's both the easiest e-foil to kind of get up on and ride, if you want to call it an e-foil. I think it's more of its own thing. Um, but so it's the easiest and the most high performance because of those handlebars. You can jump it, you can do 35 miles an hour over the water, super fast carving turns with tons of confidence. It's also the only one that I would really feel confident in taking it out in waves or big winds. I mean, we've got some videos of it going out of hull over inlet, super confident, super comfortable. Those steering bars give you a lot more authority over the board to make sure that waves or wind are not going to impede you.
What do you think the market potential for this HydroFlyer looks like in the USA?
Yeah, I think it's huge. Um, Very often we speak to people who, they have a jet ski and they may go out and cruise on it for an hour, but realistically, outside of that, they may be getting a little bit bored. With this, you can do basically all of the things you can do with a jet ski, but it's a lot more engaging, a lot more fun. Um, it's just the most enjoyable watercraft. So I think when people try it, they're immediately hooked. They love it, and they want to do it more often. Yeah, so we've got dealers across the U.S. for HydroFlyer. I guess there are a couple schools doing it as well. So getting new students out onto it, giving demos, things like that. So same distribution network as Waydoo.
Any other models in the pipeline for the HydroFlyer?
Yeah, so I think at the moment we're looking at kind of the sport version of the HydroFlyer. So a little bit of a shorter nose on it. Um, for people who aren't necessarily touching down into the water as often, it makes the board a little bit more manageable and gives you a bit more performance as well. So it's going to be a little bit lighter. It's going to turn a little bit better, more so when it's in the water. And what they're working on at the moment is backflips. So with that longer nose, sometimes it tends to get stuck in the water a little bit. With the shorter nose, now coming off of a wave, you can throw it into a backflip and really start getting into the trick potential of the HydroFlyer.
That's exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
What are the other things that you would want people to know about or be ready to try and ask about when you come to Pensacola and they get their hands on these things?
Yeah, so definitely understanding the concepts of foiling are really important. With just about all foiling mechanisms, it's really important to kind of keep your weight forward. The more you can keep the nose down and your angle of your foil flat and level and not pointed up, the safer you're going to be. So if the foil is pointed up like this, it's going to continue going up and out of the water. If you keep your weight further forward with all foiling crafts and then work your way backwards from there, you're always going to be a lot safer and a lot easier. You've got to think of it like a plane going down a runway. A plane does not take off immediately like this and then level out when it gets to its altitude. It builds speed down the runway, make sure that it's got enough lift to take off, and then when it does so, they slowly lift up and start climbing. Same thing with foiling. Yeah, you really have to be hesitant to kind of angle too far upwards. You also lose your efficiency. So a foil will kind of trudge along at more of an upwards angle than it will if it's flat, but it's not going to be maximizing the potential of the foils and the efficiency of them. The more level you can keep it, the less weight kind of backwards or forwards you can have on it, the more central you can be with your weight, the easier it's going to be, the longer your battery's going to last, the faster you're going to go.
What's the water depth that we need to have for launching these two boards?
Yeah, so I'd say it's probably around the 3 to 4 foot range to be safe. Once you're going, obviously, you can skim over stuff if you're foiling. There is obviously a risk in that, being that if you start coming down again, you may touch the bottom. So definitely 3 to 4 feet is where you want to start out at.
This is going to be so exciting. I can't wait to try both of these, and I know we're going to have a very good turnout of folks that are wanting to try them as well. Thank you, Adrian Lahai, for chatting with us about the Waydoo and the HydroFlyer.
Thanks, Tim. Can't wait for you to try them.
I'll see you in Pensacola.
Sounds good.
On the way to becoming the North American epicenter of high-performance sailing, Sail Pensacola is orchestrating initiatives that make recreational and professional sailors, local, regional, national, and international races, and sailing technology jobs in the Pensacola Bay sailing ecosystem. At Sail Pensacola, we say, sailing is our business. Visit our website at sailpensacola.org.